Martyr was formed in 1982 in the Utrecht area of the Netherlands by metalheads who'd been playing in separate bands already. The lineup for the new band consisted of Rick Bauman on guitar, Antoine van der Linden on bass, Marcel Haysackers on guitar, 14-year-old Peter Van Lonen on drums, and Robert Van Haren on vocals. With the short but powerful name of Martyr, the band wanted to focus on speedy riffs and unusual chord schemes unlike what was already being played in the metal scene.
We wanted to play heavy metal with strange notes, strange melodies sometimes, you know. That was the main goal when we started with the band, to try to sound different.
They'd start playing local shows and record a few cassette tape demos, starting with If It's Too Loud, You're Too Old and Metal Torture in 1983. Even on these early demos, the songwriting is already pretty great, especially the guitar playing. In 1984, Martyr would have a track appear on a Dutch metal compilation called Dutch Steel, with a cool album cover depicting both the heroic and the dark sides of dudes who wear horned helmets. Also around this time, Peter would be encouraged by his parents to leave Martyr and focus on schoolwork. He'd be replaced on drums by Elias Papadopoulos to record another demo titled For the Universe. The band's popularity was growing, and so was its schedule. Robert, also being a skilled soccer player, couldn't do both and decided to leave the band. He'd be replaced by Gerard Verhouw. With Gerard on board, Martyr reworked and re-recorded the For the Universe EP into their first full-length album. The more unusual chord progressions and inventive riff compositions are even more apparent here, especially in the instrumental, the Eben. There's even a section with some keyboards, laid down by producer Foss Vanderpoel. For the Universe feels very familiar as a heavy metal album, but also makes some really interesting musical choices that make it stand out from your typical mid-80s metal record.
I want to break free. Oh, baby, can't you see that? Ow, soul isn't mine. Now I want to break free. Oh, baby, can't you see?
It's a rather short album at only 28 minutes, so you're really looking at 5 full tracks with a guitar theme bookending them. But those 5 tracks are all excellent. And while it may appear that the Grim Reaper on the cover has a very small hand, you have to understand that he's holding the Earth from the moon. So it's actually a regular-sized hand and a very long arm. Also in 1985, Martyr would have a track on Metal Blade Records' Metal Massacre VI compilation and start getting some international attention.
Now, I've already called you one of Holland's best new rock bands. Tell me a little bit about your music, because not all of our viewers would have heard your album. Who, for instance, influenced you early on?
From the early days we started, of course, with Iron Maiden. They were our main influence, but later on, Queensryche, Loudness.
Right. When can we expect to see you in England? I mean, we've never actually seen the band over here.
I hope late this year or so, but no plans are made yet.
In 1986, Martyr would release their second album, Darkness at Time's Edge. Clocking in at just over 41 minutes, this album expands on For the Universe in every aspect. Overall, the style is melodic power metal, but the album is full of creative riffs and musical arrangements that both come out of nowhere and somehow fit perfectly. Gerard's vocal delivery also has a slightly different quality to it. He has no trouble hitting the higher notes, but he also spends a lot of time in a lower register.
Outside in the cold, your words are revising themselves in my mind. The blood running down my neck, mirrors of your stature reverberates.
My influences were Jeff Tate, and when I was a little boy, it was Paul Di'Anno.
Darkness at Time's Edge has all the energy of the mid-'80s, but also has a lot of really interesting elements that make it sound more like what you'd start hearing in the late 80s and early 90s. Like the breakdown on the track Follow Your Soul, for example, with the police chatter in the background. There are also several orchestral instruments used on the album, like a trombone to punch up the title track. But the best example is the last 4 minutes of the closing track, Unknown Forces, a slight reworking of the track English Forces, which incorporates a cello. After the release of Darkness at Time's Edge, Martyr got the attention of major record label Polydor Records. Despite the band having an original sound and unique songs, Polydor immediately got to work making them sound like everybody else.
In the mid-80s, things were going very well for Martyr, but when bands like Bon Jovi and Europe came up, we were in negotiation with a big record label here in the Netherlands, Polydor. They asked us also to write in that same style of music. That's something that we weren't into, and we couldn't write those commercial kind of rock. We were a pure metal band, but we tried. And that's something that I regret, because we should have stayed with our own style, and when we tried to please that record company, it wasn't good for the band, and that was sort of the reason why we split up then.
Martyr would disband in 1987, but 14 years later, the Heavy Metal Maniacs fan club of Holland got Martyr to reunite for their 2001 festival. Then in 2005, Wilfred Broekman would replace Elias on drums, and Rob Van Haren would return on vocals, with Martyr performing at Keep It True 4 and the Headbangers Open Air Festival. In 2009, Rusty Cage Records would re-release For the Universe for their Dutch metal cult series. But since both of Martyr's albums had already been re-released in 2004 by Metal for Mothers Records, Martyr decided to add an EP to this release and title it Fear the Universe. Rop's clean metal vocals are obviously a good fit, and easier to hear here compared to the production on the demo tapes. He's also a pretty lively frontman, with a personality that brings some extra energy to live shows. The tracks on the EP are a bit more straightforward than the 80s material, with groovy riffs and a somewhat darker tone. In 2011, Martyr would continue building on that sound with their first full-length album in 25 years, Circle of Eight. The video for the opening track, DI, sees a soldier reliving his memories of getting tortured. They even tell his family that he's dead. But then there's a rescue mission and the soldier gets saved, but he takes all those dark memories back home. The title track also got a video, with concert footage of the band interspersed with footage of a guy getting attacked by a low-budget horror film.
I still can hear him. Moon and darkness waits, he'll bring eternal sleep.
Circle of Eight is a darker, perhaps more mature turn for Martyr, but the interesting guitar work and song structure is still there, just with a slightly more aggressive and groove-oriented sound. There's also a re-recording of Speed of Samurai from the For the Universe album with Rop on vocals. It definitely has the same energy as the original, but with more punch and depth. Aside from the obvious technical improvements, I'd say both versions are equally awesome in their own way. Sometime after Circle of Eight, Antoine would leave Martyr and be replaced with Jeffrey Brian Rinsberger on bass to record 2016's You Are Next. The highlight for me is actually the opening track, Into the Darkest of All Realms, which got a video showcasing Martyr's fans. track Souls Breathe also got a video, featuring a duet with Rop and Marloes Valskau from the band Isegrim. Overall, this album goes even more into a speedy, thrashy direction, with plenty of room for technical guitar solos. A couple years after this, Martyr would go through another lineup shift. Rop and Rick would be joined by Jeffrey Moss on guitar, Vinny Wasink on bass, and Rick Valken on drums.
In 2018, we had some member changes. It's a more heavy lineup than we had previously with Martyr.
This lineup would record the Martyr live album, Live in Japan, in 2019. And I gotta say, as live albums go, it's a pretty damn good one. This same lineup of Martyr has a new album in the works and released a few singles in 2020, starting with No Time for Goodbyes.
I hope you'll be alright wherever you will go. No time for goodbye.
It's an uncharacteristically mellow, bluesy, almost ballady kind of a track. Fire of Rebellions kicked things back up with another video that creatively works in Martyr's fans. My favorite of the new tracks, though, is Raise Your Horns Unite, which totally lives up to the title.
Raise your horns tonight. Raise your horns and shout. We are riders in our storm. Metal power is yours. Put your arms into the sky.
And it has a really badass solo. So I'm definitely excited to check out the rest of the album when it comes out. And that, for now, is Martyr. For your homework, you absolutely must check out For the Universe from 1985. The 2004 reissue also includes the Metal Torture demo and the singles from Dutch Steel and Metal Massacre VI. Also, Darkness at Time's Edge from 1986. It's so unique and different, and I find it very difficult to only listen to one song on the album. I always end up listening to the whole thing. I'm also going to put the Live from Japan album on here. It's a nice mix of their newer material, it sounds amazing, and Rop is just great with a live audience. For extra credit, check out the Fear EP from 2009, Circle of 8 from 2011, and You Are Next from 2016. I hope you enjoyed this look at legendary Dutch metal band Martyr. I'll leave a link to their social media below, so check them out and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.